Arthur was one of my absolute favorite shows when I was younger. I mean, it had to be. I grew up in a pretty conservative household where, for the first 12-13 years of my life, it was Disney, PBS, or nothing. And that's when we were lucky enough to live in an area that could get cable or TV reception, which wasn't often. Luckily, my grandmother recorded episodes of Arthur and other shows on VHS and mailed the tapes to us, and that's where most of my TV viewing experience came from. I always thought it was a fun show, one that took the concept of a couple kids and their adventures at home, school, and their neighborhood, and did it right, with interesting characters and situations kids and even adults can relate to. And a lot of the cutaways to the characters' thoughts and imagination were fun too. Now, as I grew older, it wasn't something I actively watched, but I still caught the occasional episode from time to time. I remember the hour-long Christmas special, that Postcards from Buster spin-off that I didn't really care for, the CGI feature-length movie that I never watched, and recently I even saw the final episode of the series' 26-year run, which was okay. Looking back, it's amazing the variety of topics the show wanted to teach. Sure, there were the usual lessons on lying, stealing, forgiving, compromising, etc., but there were also episodes dedicated to autism, Alzheimer's, divorce, homosexuality, racism, and a lot of other topics that very few educational shows meant for kids usually touch upon. There was even an episode that served as an allegory for the 9/11 attacks, but most of them were handled in a mature, straightforward way, yet in a form its young audience could digest. It's impressive how well the show has held up to this day, and how timeless most of it is. It's a show I grew up with, and I'm happy to let my kids grow up with. Of course, when a show runs almost 30 years and produces nearly 500 episodes, there are going to be some stinkers among the successes. And today, we're going to talk about one of the earlier ones. Presenting from only Season 2 of the show, Arthur Meets Mr. Rogers. The episode begins with Arthur breathlessly announcing to his friends that he has two incredible announcements to make. The first is that Mr. Rogers is going to appear at their school tomorrow. And the second, that Mr. Rogers himself is staying at Arthur's house for the night. But before he can give the second announcement, Muffy speaks up.
What's the matter?
Mr. Rogers? Do they think we're babies or something?
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
And the episode immediately shoots itself in the foot. First of all, you for calling Mr. Rogers a show for babies. For my younger audience who may not have heard of it, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was a long-running PBS series starring the eponymous Fred Rogers that ran from the mid-60s all the way to 2001. And like Arthur would become, the show was ahead of its time. Even though it was aimed at preschool children, it featured a host who refused to talk down to his young audience, and the show occasionally brought up some very serious topics, including anger, sibling rivalry, divorce, and even war and death. One of the more infamous episodes dealt with the assassination of Robert Kennedy. Something you'll never see on Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, that's for sure. But the standout attribute of the show was in how mature it was. Not necessarily by showing mature things, but in treating the topics maturely, yet in a language young children could understand. This is a show that featured an interview with the actors who played the original Wicked Witch of the West, that took people behind the scenes of The Incredible Hulk, and made it a point to show how things were made and realistically worked. It's another timeless show that has no business being labeled as just another show for kids. But fine, you're 8. We all go through that period where we think we're too old for what we grew up with and we need to devote ourselves to more mature media. But then we get to the second problem. The characters, and the episode itself, don't seem to understand the difference between fantasy and reality. The other kids are immediately dismissive of Mr. Rogers because they think they're getting the Mr. Rogers from the show, not Mr. Rogers the person, despite both practically being the same guy. And I know these kids are 8, and I think one is in her early teens, but isn't that old enough to know that there's an actual person behind the face that they see on TV? Why aren't they excited about this? If I was in 3rd grade and Barney the dinosaur paid a visit, then yes, that would be pretty lame. But if the voice of Barney the dinosaur made an appearance, well, that would just be the best day of the school year. Maybe if the other kids did express concerns about what they think a visit from Mr. Rogers would be like they think he'll just talk to them like they're preschoolers and bring in his land of make-believe friends to insult their intelligence, then maybe I could understand what their problem is. But no, as it's presented in the episode, the other kids just have a problem with Mr. Rogers visiting, period. So because he's neurotic about his friends thinking Mr. Rogers is only for babies and that anyone associated with him is a baby, Arthur tries his hardest to not let his friends know that Mr. Rogers is staying with him. Which, why is he staying with them? This is a big-time celebrity, and he's crashing at some random family's house?
Are there no hotels?
We do get a mention that Arthur's mom lived in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, but in that context, I don't know if they mean she was actually Mr. Rogers' neighbor, or if she was a huge fan of his show back in the day. Either way, I don't know how I'd feel about anybody, let alone a celebrity, that I haven't thought about in years suddenly calling me up and asking if they can stay over at my house. And that's another thing. Arthur! Dude, you have a national celebrity living under your roof. You are currently the coolest kid at school. It doesn't matter if it's Bill Cosby. People literally pay millions just for a chance at the scenario you are currently in. Sack up and be proud of this incredible once-in-a-lifetime event. But no, Arthur's embarrassed to have a beloved celebrity staying with him, so the rest of the episode is him bending over backwards not to let anyone know about it. He does give the excuse that he doesn't want people crowding his house and mobbing Mr. Rogers for autographs, which is a much more valid reason why he wouldn't want to let anyone know he's there, but let's not let logic invade our story now. Instead, Arthur grabs a handful of letters from Mr. Rogers to take to the mailbox himself, so his friends won't know Mr. Rogers is staying with him. He bumps into Prunella, causing the mail to scatter, and Prunella becomes suspicious when she sees the name Fred on the letters. Arthur quickly makes up an excuse that he wants to change his name and quickly runs off. Later, DW offers to take Mr. Rogers on a walk around the neighborhood. Arthur tries to stall by playing the piano, but runs out of things to play. Still worried that his friends would see them together and become insanely jealous, mock him mercilessly, he disguises himself and DW with beards. Which, if this was DW's idea, I could understand, but Arthur, you're in 3rd grade. You know better than this. Unsurprisingly, they're caught by Buster, whom Arthur forces to promise not to tell anyone that Mr. Rogers is staying with him. They pass by the Sugar Bowl, where Brain, Prunella, and Prunella's crazy older sister Rubella are sitting around talking about how weird Arthur's been acting. Suddenly, Rubella gets a vision that supposedly explains why Arthur's acting crazy. Her reasoning?
Zombies! Zombies are here in Elwood City! It's up to us to break the trance before he turns us all into zombie slaves.
I don't know what's more insane, that explanation or that the 3 immediately buy it. Including Brain. Brain! The smartest and most logical kid in Arthur's class instantly buys the zombie theory. Good to know character assassination was involved to make this plot work. Anyway, that logic gives them the right to trespass outside of Arthur's house and spy on them having dinner and later talking in the living room. All while somehow not seeing Mr. Rogers among the group. Arthur notices, and instead of telling them to knock it off and go away, just closes the drapes. Undeterred, the 3 stalkers sneak around the house, only to be seen by a nosy neighbor who calls the police. We then see Mr. Rogers in DW's room singing to her and Buster. Yeah, this wouldn't fly today. Arthur tries to kick Buster out, which, why? You already know you can't trust him with a secret. Wouldn't you want Buster as far away from everyone else until tomorrow? But then the police arrive. And apparently they brought a news crew that instantly puts together a report and has Mr. Rogers on the news later that night, exposing Arthur's secret. Okay, forget Mr. Rogers randomly staying with Arthur. This is the most unbelievable thing in the entire episode. Later, a clearly embarrassed Arthur is sitting on the swings when Mr. Rogers comes out and sits next to him. And I know this is a tender moment, and I've been holding this in since the start of the video, but I have to say it. Anthropomorphic Mr. Rogers is creepy. Maybe it's the perfect oval shape of his head, or how his real hairstyle doesn't work with his more cartoonish proportions, or most likely it's that, unlike how Arthur and his family are drawn, he doesn't have eyes, just 2 black pupils that move around his face. It's uncanny and doesn't match the rest of the show's art style, and something they fixed for how most later celebrities would be drawn. Admittedly, in profile, he doesn't look too bad, but then we get a frontal view of his face and... the apocalypse is now. Anyway, Mr. Rogers and Arthur start talking and discuss what's allegedly Arthur's problem.
I just don't want everyone to think that I like...
You don't want them to think you're a little kid anymore. Sometimes you feel like you're too old for certain things.
Except that wasn't the problem. The problem was that Arthur didn't want to be seen with you because his friends can't separate the man from the character he plays. Whether Arthur likes you or not is not a factor. It's never even brought up if Arthur ever liked or even watched your show, so telling him not to be ashamed of what he likes isn't the moral of the story. You know, I'm reminded of 2 later Arthur episodes that also had a very similar plot, but executed 10 times better. That's a Baby Show and The Rat Who Came to Dinner. Both also deal with Arthur trying to hide something from his friends. Except there, Arthur does have something to be embarrassed about. In one, he's watching a show his friends say is too young for them, and the other, he has his overzealous teacher living with him. Both are valid concerns for him, and how it will be perceived by others. He's not trying to hide something on the off chance someone will make fun of him for it. It's known from the start that he will be ridiculed if it gets out. And it does, and he is. But there, it's not his fault, and he's not bending over backwards over the neurotic fear that his friends can't separate fantasy from reality. Now, I don't like those episodes either, especially since the vicious teasing Arthur gets begs the question why these people are still his friends, but at least Arthur's actions follow some kind of logic, and the moral actually is not to be ashamed to like what you like, instead of whatever they're trying to say here.
I just don't want people to make fun of me.
Real friends don't make fun of real friends.
Oh, speaking of That's a Baby Show.
I won't say anything about you watching Love Ducks every day.
The Love Ducks? What did you learn this week, Arthur? Where your nose is?
You don't understand.
Well, I guess you don't have any real friends, Arthur. Arthur goes to school the next morning, where he learns that all his friends saw the news and now know that Mr. Rogers was staying with him. Except for Binky, but he shuts up when the man himself shows up at the class. Mr. Rogers gives a presentation, Binky asks for his autograph, and the episode ends with everyone smiling. I hate that I have to hate this episode. A crossover with Mr. Rogers sounds like a fun idea, and the guy gives the same charming yet authoritative performance he gave on his own show. But Arthur is completely unlikable, letting his fear of the worst case scenario get in the way of enjoying a visit from a wonderful person, which almost ruins Mr. Rogers' experience as well. Admittedly, the ethics aren't terrible. It's not like Arthur's Big Hit, or DW's Very Bad Mood, or Buster Baxter Cat Saver, or My Club Rules, or the dozens of other bad and mediocre episodes that arguably teach a bad message or reward bad behavior. But what they try to present as the moral is irrelevant. Arthur's not worried his friends will think he's a baby because he likes Mr. Rogers' show. He's worried that they're so close-mindedly anal that they'll attack him because someone related to something they claim to not like dared to briefly stay in his house. Which honestly might have helped the episode if it was all Arthur's neurotic fear of being found out. Like, he never even announces that Mr. Rogers is coming to town. The beginning is just him imagining that's how his friends will react, and he acts on that assumption. When in reality, they're perfectly cool with it, and Arthur learns he didn't have to try to hide it. The moral could have been not to make quick judgments, and to check with your friends before you jump to conclusions. Or heck, Arthur's excuse that he didn't want people hassling Mr. Rogers for autographs could have been his actual reasoning. He's so excited that Mr. Rogers is staying with them that he becomes obsessively overprotective. And the moral is that celebrities are people too, so check with what they want first. But no, we just have the friends being idiots for assuming that a visit from Mr. Rogers solely means they'll be subjected to the show they claim to have outgrown, and for trespassing on Arthur's private life, and Arthur being an idiot for hiding the fact he has a celebrity living under his roof. And the final damning factor of the episode? This isn't Mr. Rogers' story. Sure, he appears and he provides his voice, but besides that and a couple passing mentions of his show, he has nothing to do with the episode in general. They could have put anyone in this role. Arthur could have come up with any excuse to be embarrassed by any celebrity, and it would have made no difference. They could have had Mr. Rogers tell a story, or give the history of how he got into showbiz, or even had the class visit the Mr. Rogers set, something to tie the two shows together. But no, I guess they heard that he was available for 5 minutes, so they threw together a script that would involve him, possibly one they had lying around in case of immediate celebrity, and made that the crossover. I know a lot of people like this episode, and that's fine. I don't think it's top 10 bad or even top 20, but it is an episode that annoys me to no end, and one that I never want to see again. If revisiting this episode brings a nostalgic tear to your eye, well, keep that feeling for as long as you can. For me, if this episode asked if I would be its neighbor, I think I'd rather move away.
Every day when you're walking down the street, everybody that you meet has an original point of view.